Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. We got some stuff to talk about here. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. All the real bad man. Rastafari. Who you got in here? Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. You got Eon, Rusby, Benny Stacks, Maga Mark Hatch, David Fisher, Danny, Chris Santos, Dog Boone, Ortega, Paladin. We got Sparks, Encircle, JR, Kelly, Jack Hammer, Harold Protagonist. We got Harley, Jazz, Charlene, what's up, Charlene? Tim C. Big up Fernie G. Yeah, so the main topic of conversation for this particular stream is the announcement that Mike Tyson, according to his social media, Floyd Mayweather's social media, and other social media platforms, Mike Tyson will be fighting Floyd Mayweather next year, 2026, in an exhibition bout. I'm going to give you my thoughts and listen to your thoughts about it. Some people have already given their thoughts in the comments so far. Eon says, as long as they sell it as an exhibition and don't try and make it seem like it's real, I'm all for it. Basically a spar. Rusby says, always idiots who will believe someone is getting knocked out. That's why it'll do big numbers. Maga talking about Prime Golovkin. I mean, I was a big critic of Floyd Mayweather during his career, but I'm not sure why he's supposed to fight a Prime Golovkin. Well, to be fair, he did say he was TBE, right? I guess fighting a Prime Golovkin would be the equivalent of Sugar Ray Leonard stepping up and fighting Marvin Hagler. But Benny Stacks is Michael Conlon on Channel 5. Didn't Michael Conlon retire a year ago or so? Big up David Fisher. Mark Hatch has a fight that would make sense is Mayweather Pacquiao too, but we all know Floyd wouldn't risk it. Danny says Crawford looked mango juiced in recent IG posts. I saw the IG post, but I don't see any reason to suspect that he's mango juiced. He's an athlete. Athletes can gain some size. I mean, he's not walking around at 147 pounds, obviously. He probably walks around, I don't know, 160 plus. I'm not saying he's definitely clean, but I see no reason right now to just jump to the conclusion. See, a lot of time, people who are not athletes and maybe struggle to either get down in weight or put size on in the gym, they see athletes doing it and they're like, well, they all must be juiced. No, a lot of time it's just genetics. Yes, there's a lot of juicing in boxing. There's a lot of juicing in professional sports. But I know from my own personal experience as being someone that is naturally prone to gain muscle easily, I've never done creatine in my life. Never mind roids. Do you know what I mean? But, I'd be able to pack size on so easy just doing a few push-ups and some sit-ups and basic boxing training. And all of a sudden, my chest is out here, So a lot of it is just genetics. But again, it's muddy waters because there is a lot of PEDs in boxing, obviously. I mean, look at Canelo. He's been popped in the past. East Midlands Fight Fan says, who thinks Mayweather will do a number on him? Yes, Hyro protagonist, real bad man. Big up Mr. Luca for the super chat. He says, what do you make of Haney-Eddie beef? Are they beefing again? Danny says Crawford is naturally skinny. He's a super lightweight. A lightweight is 135 pounds. So when we say that he's naturally a lightweight, we're not saying he walks around at 135 pounds. Nobody who fights at lightweight walks around at that. Terence Crawford has filled out over the years. You know, he's in his late 30s now. It's very unlikely that if you're a lightweight in your 20s, you're still going to be a lightweight in your late 30s. You know what I mean? It's very unlikely. Your body's going to fill out. You're not going to be able to get down to the same kind of weights. And these are all artificial weights anyway. Most lightweights are not lightweights. These are guys who in the ring, guys who fight 135 pounds in the ring, a lot of the time they're over 150 pounds. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't jump to them kind of conclusions. But as far as the Haney-Eddie beef, the last I remember of Eddie Hearn and Devin Haney going back and forth is when Eddie Hearn failed to bid for the Devin Haney Sandor Martin fight. You guys remember that? And Devin Haney was acting like Eddie Hearn snaked him and this, that, and the other. And Eddie Hearn basically said, well, you didn't want to sign with me a long-term deal. You wanted to do a fight-by-fight. So if you're only doing a fight-by-fight, then why the hell should I bid for your fight against Sandor Martin? It's not like it's going to sell. And I think that's fair enough. It didn't seem like a spectacular matchup on paper, did it? So, I don't know. I guess it's just Devin Haney. Is he being manipulative, or did he really think that Eddie Hearn was his special friend? Pause. I don't know. What do you think about it, Mr. Luca? Oh, okay. Yeah, I did see something about that. Mr. Luca says he said something about Devin's only interested in paydays. The thing is, Eddie Hearn often talks before he thinks. Shout out to Toro TV. So I don't think that... let me rephrase it. Eddie Hearn's comments, sound bites in an interview, can easily be misconstrued, you know? Because he just talks before he thinks. He doesn't necessarily mean it in the way that it's been taken. Benny Stack says, did you see Jael Pattaya on TalkSport interview constantly swearing? Yeah, I saw that. He is a man who cannot be controlled. Toro TV says, I've just arrived, big up Hatman, and I love the Mayweather versus Tyson. I was hoping Mike Tyson would have looked more impressive against Jake Paul. Can't wait to hear your take. All right, so let me give you my take. Let's go through some visuals here. We've got the intro on screen. So here's the poster for Floyd Mayweather versus Mike Tyson, the exhibition bout, which has apparently been signed for sometime in 2026. The platform that will be airing it, the venue, etc., I guess to be confirmed. This is the ages of both men. Mike Tyson, 59. Floyd Mayweather, 48. Floyd Mayweather, 11 years younger. Not only that, he's lived a much cleaner life. Mike Tyson, from the very early stages of his championship run, his first championship run, was on the nose candy, boozing, staying out late, piling on the pounds, yo-yoing up and down. Oh yeah, a prime Tyson was doing all that. Never mind the post-prison Tyson. Prime Tyson was doing all that. He lives to excess. He always did. The point I'm making here is, not only has Mayweather got an age advantage, he's also taken care of himself, unlike Mike Tyson over the years. He will be far better preserved at 48 than Mike Tyson was at 48. All right? So there's that. Obviously, Mike Tyson much physically bigger in terms of body mass. There's only about 2 inches in height difference. Mike Tyson being 5'10", Floyd Mayweather 5'8". But yeah, one guy is taking care of himself, the other hasn't. And so to the point that somebody just made there in the live chat, I wouldn't at all be surprised if Mayweather totally outboxes him. Yes, this is an exhibition. It's an exhibition because why? Mayweather insisted it to be an exhibition. Is it an exhibition because there's fears over the safety of the fighters? Is it an exhibition because Mayweather doesn't want to have potentially a loss on his record? I don't know. Just because it's an exhibition, because again, there are a multitude of reasons, like I've just laid out, that they have decided to make this an exhibition, it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody won't try to win the fight in the eyes of the viewers. I'm not saying that will be the case here. I'm saying it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody won't try. It's been quite well documented that despite being cool in the past, you can see some old pictures here of Mike Tyson and Floyd Mayweather. This is obviously when Mike Tyson was still fighting. A very young Floyd Mayweather was there with him, looking like a fan. Here's another one. Mike Tyson with Mayweather and his dad, Floyd Sr. This was obviously post-prison. Despite being cool in the past, Mike Tyson and Floyd Mayweather had a period in their relationship which was frosty. Well, Mike Tyson said some disparaging things about Floyd Mayweather, and I don't know if there's anything deeper to it than what I'm about to describe, but I know that Mike didn't like Mayweather, in his view, and in my view as well, disrespecting a lot of the old legends from the past, talking disparagingly about Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali, so on and so forth. And Mike Tyson is a boxing historian. He has an appreciation for many of the legendary fighters beyond the vast majority of boxing fans. Okay? He has a deep, deep appreciation for a lot of these guys. They were his heroes growing up. He used to study black and white footage because Cuss, along with Jimmy Jacobs, had a massive, massive collection of old fight films. And a young teenage Mike Tyson used to, again, be watching and studying all these old greats. And so he gained admiration for them and tried to emulate them in many ways. And he's always had incredible admiration for Muhammad Ali. When he was locked up as a juvenile, Muhammad Ali actually spoke to him. Ali was on some type of, visit where he was visiting these troubled youth, hoping to inspire them onto a different path. And Mike Tyson was one of the youth who he spoke to. Okay? It's crazy how life works sometimes, right? Small world. So, yeah, Mike Tyson, whenever he speaks about Muhammad Ali, and he's an emotional guy, we know that. But whenever he speaks about Muhammad Ali, it brings him to tears, right? It brings him to tears when he speaks about Ali because of how much heart Muhammad Ali had. He had a massive heart in that boxing ring. And so for Floyd Mayweather to talk disparagingly about Muhammad Ali, yeah, Mike didn't like it. Nor did he like it when he was talking disparagingly about Ray Robinson. And this was always my main gripe with Floyd Mayweather. The TBE. He would disparage these great fighters, say that he was better than them all, yet he was unwilling to take the risks that those great fighters took. And a most recent example of it would be Roy Jones Jr., right? Roy Jones Jr. took risks that Floyd Mayweather never even dreamed of taking. But yet he's there clowning Roy Jones Jr. for getting knocked out later on in his career, not being undefeated, so on and so forth. So, I know Mike wasn't happy about all that. I don't know if there's anything deeper than that as far as why their relationship got frosty. Mike took a few jabs at Mayweather, said that he's a scared little man and that he goes around everywhere with security. He's afraid to pick his kids up from school by himself, etc. Whereas Mike is good everywhere. He can go anywhere and he's loved, truth be told. So yeah, he took a few swipes. Then there was some type of convention. I don't know if it was the WBC convention, if it was the Hall of Fame. I forget which exact event it was, but they were both on stage and Mike Tyson approached Floyd Mayweather, kind of scowled at him and threw a fake little punch, and Mayweather didn't even flinch. And then they dapped it up or hugged or whatever it was. That's the last time I recall seeing them together. So I'm sure they're going to try and build this fight, this exhibition, on the strength of their past disagreements. Why wouldn't they, right? I'm sure they're going to do that. Maybe they'll even tie in Roy Jones. Maybe Mike Tyson's going to say, well, I'm fighting for the honor of Roy Jones because he's been disrespected by Mayweather. I'm going to go in there and shut Mayweather. You know the way that they tend to sell these things. But yeah, that's the background of Mike Tyson, or some of the background of Mike Tyson and Floyd Mayweather Jr. Mayweather Jr. surpassed Mike Tyson in terms of career earnings, right? But he certainly never surpassed Mike Tyson in terms of popularity, which shows you how the game has changed from a commercial perspective, that you can be less popular, far less recognizable than a Mike Tyson, but make a load more money. And Mike Tyson made a lot of money. Don't get that twisted. But Floyd Mayweather made a hell of a lot more. So these two guys fighting each other then. Some people say it's sad. Again, that's their ages, 59-48. Tail of the tape. Mike Tyson 5'10", Mayweather 5'8". Mayweather's got the longer reach. The records, Mayweather 50-0, Mike Tyson 50-7. KOs as well. So there are two main modes of thinking regarding this fight. There are some people who say it's really sad. These guys are tarnishing their legacies, particularly Mike Tyson. There are others, like me, who say it doesn't bother them at all. Particularly when you consider the fact that Mike Tyson has always been a trashy guy. Floyd Mayweather's always been a trashy guy. Neither of these guys has ever been classy. The classiness for Mike Tyson in particular has always been something that his fans have projected onto him. Mike Tyson's never been classy. Mike Tyson, even when he was young, that whole classy image was something that Jimmy Jacobs and Bill Caton and all those guys concocted. Mike was never that guy. He's always been a trashy guy. He's drawn towards trashy things, seedy things, sleazy stuff, seedy characters, criminals and gangsters. That's who he feels most comfortable around. He said it himself on his own podcast countless times. I remember reading an interview, this might have been back in the 90s, where Mike Tyson said, ever since the Buster Douglas fight, he's been a fraud. Now, he didn't elaborate much on what he meant by that, so you can speculate on exactly what he meant. But he said, ever since the Buster Douglas fight, he's been a fraud. And certainly after he lost to Holyfield, could you say he became disillusioned with his legacy? Maybe. But he didn't care about the championship belts. After the bite incident and all the other controversies that Mike Tyson was involved in, trying to break opponents' arms and all this type of business. Other legal issues outside the ring. He obviously did WWE, right? Stone Cold Steve Austin and Generation X. After all this type of stuff, and after losing up to a certain point 3 fights, the Douglas fight and the 2 Holyfield fights, all of that care about his legacy and, how he would be remembered went out the window. They didn't give a damn. So this isn't something recent. This isn't something that has just come about over the past 5-10 years with Mike Tyson. No, bro. This goes all the way back to at least the 90s in terms of him totally disregarding any notion of his legacy. It's nothing new. Mike Tyson has always been like this. Yeah, for one, he's always been a trashy guy, but in terms of disregarding the legacy, that goes back to, like I say, at least the 1990s, when he was still an active top 10 heavyweight. So it's interesting to me that his fans feel so sad and so disappointed about him participating in these fights with the Jake Pauls of the world and now a welterweight in Floyd Mayweather. He don't feel sad about it. He feels great about it. Making a load of money for a little move around in the ring. Can't believe his luck. Most of the guys that Mike Tyson idolized growing up and the champions who he respected, people like Sonny Liston, who he took a lot of inspiration from in terms of intimidation tactics and stuff like that. He saw those guys die destitute. Skid row, finished. Here he is at nearly 60 years of age, and he's still making tens of millions from boxing exhibitions, bro. Mike Tyson has spoken about the likes of Joe Louis. How at the back end of his career, yeah, he was doing gimmicky stuff because he was broke. He weren't living the life of Riley. And there were many other great fighters of the past that Mike Tyson admired that ended up destitute. They couldn't dream of being, 58, 59 years of age and making a $20 million purse. Unheard of. So in fact, Mike Tyson's actually making history. Making history. He don't care about there's an official loss to Jake Paul in his record. He got the bag from boxing at damn near 60 years of age. He couldn't have imagined when he was a kid growing up that his earning power could have lasted this long. You know what I mean? So I don't see it as sad at all. I see it actually as an example of the enduring popularity of Mike Tyson. That he's able to do stuff like this. Now, as far as how the fight goes, well, as I said earlier on, I wouldn't at all be surprised if Mayweather just runs rings around him, makes him look silly, even if it is just an exhibition, right? These guys have both got egos. So is there a rule where they're not allowed to knock each other out? I don't know. But even if there is such a rule, they're competitors. They're going to want to look like they're getting the better of it. And despite the fact that Mayweather is, again, far smaller, if they'd fought in their primes, it'd be a not just grotesque mismatch, a dangerous mismatch in Mike Tyson's favor, obviously. Okay? But they're not in their primes. Mayweather's 11 years younger. He's far more well-preserved. He's looked after himself. And so, Mayweather might just hit and hop it. Hit Mike Tyson upside the head with some flashy combinations, move around, and then continue to brag on social media because Mayweather loves to brag. He loves to troll. And maybe that's what Mike Tyson fans are afraid of. But I would say to them, don't be afraid. The guy's already lost to Jake Paul. Once that has happened, there's nothing more to fear. That's as bad as it gets if you're a Mike Tyson fanboy. And of course, there are going to be some silly casuals out there who, if Mayweather looks like he gets the better of it over however many rounds, let's say it's 8 rounds, they're going to say, oh, wow, Mayweather could have beaten Mike Tyson in his prime. Yeah, there'll be some silly casuals out there thinking that. But the amount of silly stuff that casuals think is incredible. Do you know what I mean? If you worry about that all the time, you'd end up going crazy. So, yeah, there are going to be silly casuals who say stuff like that. And from Mayweather's perspective, this is actually a bit of a master stroke. Yeah, because he knows that there are silly Mayweather preys on the silly casuals. He's been doing it for years with the TBE stuff, not willing to take the risks of the fighters he disparages from the past, but focusing in on the fact that they had losses on their records, most of them, and he doesn't. Therefore, he's better than all of them. That old chestnut, yeah? And it's kind of a masterstroke here because, like I say, he's going in there against the Mike Tyson whose body is shot to bits, who's abused his body over the decades. He's been bunning herb, drinking, yo-yoing in weight. He's got all sorts of physical ailments. And Mayweather's thinking to himself, I go in there, box rings around this guy, and then I'm going to go on social media and say, I beat Mike Tyson. I'm the GOAT. I'm TBE. He might even infer he could have beaten him in his prime. That's the type of nonsense that Mayweather likes to keep up with. So this is really very fitting of Floyd Mayweather to be doing something like this. Yeah? Anyway, I'll throw it over to the chat. We do have some other stuff to talk about as well. Toro says, what about Prime versus Prime? Well, you know how that would have gone. Chris Ward Music says, Mike Tyson versus Mayweather is just a blatant comedy cash grab. Just rich people stealing money off stupid fans based on past glory and nostalgia. Can't argue with that. However, it may be on Netflix. Actually, will it be on Netflix? After the debacle that was Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, and I'm amazed that people thought it would be anything other than a debacle. Will Netflix want any part of a Mike Tyson fight again? After that carry on. Big up Kevon Green. Said Mayweather has such a boring style. Without him acting like a jackass, he wouldn't sell any tickets. I can't tell if he's a genius or an idiot. So I was actually thinking about Mike Tyson. Excuse me. I was actually thinking about Floyd Mayweather today. Shout out to AJ for the super chat. He says, even when Mike was down bad and had money issues, I always thought he would come in clutch with big paydays again somehow. The Tyson brand is just too damn strong. That's a whole fact. I'm going to say the Mike Tyson brand is the strongest brand in the history of boxing. It's the most powerful brand in the history of boxing. I've never seen anything like it. The popularity of this guy, decades after, folks, his prime was in the mid to late 80s. Do you know what I mean? We're talking about the best part of 40 years ago. And yet, he's massively popular even now. Crazy, right? I'm saying he's got the most powerful brand in boxing history. Look at the longevity. But, yeah, big up AJ for the super chat. Big up Kevon Green. I was thinking about Mayweather today because somebody in my Element group posted a clip that Mayweather put up on his socials of him. I think he was in a private jet counting stacks of money. And he said how this clip was corny and Mayweather's annoying, putting up that kind of stuff. As after watching the clip, I didn't actually reply, but I was thinking in my head, I was like, Mayweather loves attention. We know this. And that's probably the only way he knows how to get attention, is to put up videos like that, counting stacks of money. Because he's never come across as the deepest guy, has he, Floyd Mayweather? He's never come across as very deep. And even if he is deep and he's just not showing us it, he's not very good at articulating himself. So either he's just a really simple-minded individual who, maybe simple-minded is not the best way to describe it. Maybe he's just a person with a really shallow character, very little depth to him. And so if that's the case, like I say, if he wants attention, how else does he go about it? He's not going to talk about anything deep. You ever see this guy's socials? It's just counting money, designer clothes, promoting strip clubs. That's it. And then occasionally trolling other fighters. Literally about it. Now, I was thinking to myself, if Mayweather is actually a really one-dimensional person and doesn't have much going on inside his head other than boxing, making money, and opening strip clubs, maybe that's why he was such a good fighter. Because there's nothing distracting him. Do you know what I mean? People can become distracted. They can become lost in their own head with all the things that they're thinking about. If you got a guy like Mayweather who, again, I'm just putting this out there as a possibility, I'm not saying it's the case, who's like really shallow and one-dimensional, maybe that allowed him to focus on boxing to the extent where he became this defensive genius, because he doesn't think about much else. Maybe he's got like 3 or 4 different thoughts, and that allowed him to focus and become one of the greatest defensive boxers of all time. Just food for thought. What do you guys think about it? Because you look at some of the fighters of the past, the ones who are really big public figures, and they start dabbling in different areas and talking about different aspects of life. None of that from Floyd Mayweather. He's still in this money-made character. Maybe that's as deep as he is. Pause, right? But maybe that's all he is. Maybe there's nothing else there. And if he really still craves this attention, what else is he going to do? Other than post videos, counting stacks. What else is he going to do? That's just who he is. Big up AJ for the super chat. The Mike Tyson brand is undefeated. Big up Supersize Fries. He said, Terence Crawford just uploaded photos of his current physique for his super middleweight debut. What do you think of his size? I think that how can I describe this? I think that people can put too much stock in pictures, because when you're flexing like that and when you've got perspiration all over your body and maybe you've just done a bunch of strength work, it can make you look a lot bigger than you actually are. Do you know what I mean? Especially when there's nobody else in shot, when it's just you in the picture. Because I saw the photo and there's people in the comments saying, he's like the Incredible Hulk. Not really. You know what I mean? So I want to see how he looks. To me, he didn't look that big Yeah, he looks shredded. I can say he looks more shredded than we've seen him in the past. But it's kind of like Mayweather, going back to Floyd Mayweather. You guys remember when he came out of prison? I've never seen Mayweather so shredded. He was never that shredded in his pro career. Don't get it twisted. Mayweather was always, trim. But he didn't have as much muscle definition in the abs and the shoulders. And yeah, because he was doing weights and all sorts of other stuff, which allows you, and presumably dieting a lot, which allows you to get even more shredded. Because you're not maybe taking on as much carbs as you normally do, not retaining as much water, right? If you're just looking for aesthetics. So Mayweather came out of prison looking more shredded than at any point in his pro career. All right. So, yeah, I want to say Terence Crawford looks more shredded because he's doing more strength work and stuff like that. He'll be eating more, so his muscles will look a bit more bulky. Again, I'm not totally dismissing the possibility of juicing and all that kind of stuff, but I don't see any smoking gun there. Let's just put it that way. And I don't see him looking too big right now. And we need to see what he's going to weigh on the scales. Again, because pictures can be deceiving. What I said in a previous live stream is that I don't think it would be a good idea for him to come in 168 bang on the dot. I don't think he should be aiming for that. You're not going to beat, or at least not in my estimation, Canelo Alvarez for strength and power. So don't try to. Focus on your strengths as a smaller man coming up, which are obviously speed, agility, maybe reflexes and whatnot. If you start piling on too much muscle, you're going to give away your main advantage. So, yeah, that's my take on Terence Crawford's pictures. Big up Supersized Fries. Big up JR for the super chat. He says, what the hell is going on with Floyd having Bieber around for a few years? Yeah, that's a question that I've asked several times on these streams in the wake of the whole Diddy thing, right? Because Justin Bieber was associated with Diddy for a long time, and that was always a weird association. Here we have this kid who at the time when he met Diddy might have been a teenager or very early 20s, hanging around with a man in his 40s. You wouldn't have thought they had anything in common in terms of their backgrounds. I always found that to be a very, very weird association. Similar thing with Floyd Mayweather. Why are people not asking that question? Why would Floyd Mayweather, black American guy from the hood, where is he from? Flint, Michigan? Why would a guy from the hood in Flint in his late 30s be hanging around with this skinny little Canadian kid? Weird, man. Very, very weird. Again, he must have been late teens, early 20s, I'm guessing, when he started hanging around with Floyd Mayweather. Yeah, so I got questions. A lot of questions. I'm not making any accusations. Mayweather's got long money. But, yeah, a lot of questions, bro. I don't know what that is all about. I never understood it. Never understood it. Maybe I don't want to understand it. Yeah, I remember that. That's right. Kylie. Mayweather was shredded with a mad hairline when he came out of prison. Yeah, the hairline was crazy. JR says, new 28 years later trailer dropped. The Bone Temple pause. Yeah, I watched the first installment of 28 years later, and I found it to be kind of an odd movie. It wasn't bad. It was just, I don't know, it was just really weird. A weird movie. There were certain things that were bad about it, but there were other things that were okay. I don't know. It's just very, very weird. A totally different tone to the original movie, 28 Days Later. The sequel, 28 Weeks Later, was trash. And this obviously is another movie in the series, directed by Danny Boyle. And totally different tone, weird, particularly by the end, you know? It's like, what is this, a Quentin Tarantino movie? That's what it felt like by the end. It's like some kind of Quentin Tarantino movie, like Kill Bill or something. What a weird tone. Yeah, the Savile Ninjas. God only knows what that was all about. Afro Soul says, I think it was just a marketing move. Bieber's clout was insane at the time and Floyd wanted to feed off his popularity. It actually worked for him in the end. That's the way that you could read it. But think about the circles that Mayweather moves in. Think about the image that he projects for himself. Justin Bieber didn't fit in with any of that. At all. You know, it's like this little pop kid from Canada. Totally out of place in the Mayweather setup. If you put Lil Wayne there as he was, yeah, that makes sense. Rappers and all these other kind of people. Justin Bieber? Nah, bro. I got serious questions about that. Very serious questions. Big up Anthony YouTube. Big up Adiola Depot. So, we can come back onto this stuff if you guys want to keep talking about it, but there is one other story that I want to mention here. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this. Somebody mentioned it on a live a couple of weeks ago, actually, but this individual has now appeared in public for the first time in a very long time, as far as interviews, and that is Mr. James DeGale, a.k.a. Chunky. He went missing, fell off the planet after he lost to Eubank Jr., but now he's back to do bare knuckle. He did an interview on TalkSport earlier on today, and I have to say, to me, he looked terrible, bro. I'm not trying to be funny. I got no vendetta against the guy. I'm just being objective the best I can, the way I see it. And James DeGale looked terrible. He's only 39. He looks 50. I'm not playing. The guy looks 50 years old. And he's only 39. I don't know what that Eubank Jr. loss did to him. Or has he not been living the best kind of life since that period? Again, no idea. So yeah, he looked very old. And he sounds punchy to me. I'm not sure if anybody else picked up on this or got this impression from the way he was talking, but he sounds punchy. Not like James Toney, Riddick Bowe punchy, but still, if you compare it to the way he used to talk when he was an active fighter, he's slurring his words and he don't seem all there to me, like mentally and emotionally. He seems a little off. He was always, how can I describe him? Not the easiest character to like. I never hated James DeGale, but the guy just never came across as very personable, you know? But I remember the way he used to talk. Now he sounds like he's slurring his words and he just doesn't seem all there. And it was interesting when Andy Goldstein on TalkSport asked him why he's coming back. And there was the other guy, the black guy. I can't remember the black guy's name. He's on TalkSport with Andy Goldstein all the time. But Goldstein in particular kept pressing him on why he's decided to come back. And James DeGale couldn't give a straight answer. He also couldn't give a straight answer on what he's been doing, since he retired, whenever it was 7 years ago, 8 years ago. He couldn't give a straight answer on what he's been doing since then. He said, looking after my kid. His kid's only 4 months old. He's been gone 7 years. So God knows what. I'm just reading in between the lines. I could be totally wrong because he made a lot of money in his career. But I'm just reading in between the lines and thinking that he's maybe made some bad investments, hasn't handled his money as well as he would have wanted to. Or maybe he just, when is enough money enough? Maybe he's still got plenty in the bank, but feels like he needs some more to do certain other things in his life. I'm not sure. But yeah, I feel like, or I suspect, money is the main motivation here, rather than what he's claiming it to be, which is, I've just got an itch that I want to scratch, come back, fight bare knuckle. And they asked him in the interview, if there's one fighter that you could face, that you'd like to face more than any other, who would it be? And you know who he said? Well, you can see it there in the thumbnail. It weren't Eubank Jr. It was Jake Paul. So he's back for the bag. Yeah? Has Chunky mismanaged his money? Is that what's going on here? Any of you guys have any inside information on what James DeGale has been keeping up with since he retired following the Eubank Jr. defeat? Thomas says he's been on a nose candy. He kept sniffing throughout the interview. I'm not going to say he's been on the nose candy. I've got no knowledge of that. But all I can tell you is he did keep sniffing throughout the interview. And it brought that into my mind, right? Again, I can't make any accusations because I got no idea what he does. But he looks old now, beyond his years, in my opinion, beyond 39. And punchy. Toro says, I've never been a fan of bare knuckle. I think boxing gloves refine the sport of punching to its best. I agree. Cash says, didn't Mayweather try to get with DeGale's sister? Yeah, he hollered at DeGale's sister back in the days, and DeGale was kind of annoyed about that. Okay, the boxer's got his view and many others. They're making accusations of James DeGale, which I cannot substantiate. I have no knowledge of any of that. Danny says, definitely broke. He had a desperate look about him on TalkSport. Did any of you guys actually see it? Bro, he had a desperate look about him. East Midlands Fight Fan says, what are we talking about now? We're talking about James DeGale appearing on TalkSport to announce that he's coming back to fight in bare knuckle, BKB. And he said he wants a couple of fights. Maybe not just in BKB, but in traditional boxing. East Midlands Fight Fan says, DeGale's always had a desperate look. I wouldn't say so. He didn't have the same look back in the day that he has now. Now he looks desperate, bro. He looks he's crazy, bro. He don't look good at all. Toro says he must have got involved with some weird lady or something. He did blame the losses and issues he had at the back end of his career on not living a professional lifestyle, partying, boozing, women. Yeah, Kylie says, he looked like DeGale, but with one of those snap filters on that make you look old as hell. Kyle says, if you're rich, you shouldn't have women issues. True indeed. If you're rich and you're having women issues, you're just foolish because you're picking the wrong women. If you're a rich man, you've got access to any kind of woman you want. If you're not getting the kind of woman you want, you're foolish. Simple. Yeah, that's right, Tim C. DeGale said he hopes a good performance in bare knuckle could land him a big fight in boxing, an exhibition, or even misfits. That's right, he was quite open about it. Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, he kept throwing the word misfits in there. Yes. Mark Hatch says, checked it out now. He does sound punchy. Yeah. His speech just isn't quite right. The box says he'll fight till next year. That's something that could actually happen. I reckon. That's something that sounds more realistic than James DeGale versus Jake Paul. I couldn't rule out the Jake Paul fight completely, but Darren Till, Chunky DeGale, I could see it. If he comes through in the bare knuckle, I could see it, I could actually see that. Indeed, La Cosa Nostra Gaming says, not surprised he's punchy after the Badou Jack fight. Yeah, that was a torrid fight. He took a hell of a lot of punishment in that fight. Was dropped, twice by Eubank Jr. as well in his last contest. Big up Alex for the super chat. He says, big up Hatman. Could you ever do a James Toney career review? What a character and what a fighter. Don't seem to be anyone like him anymore. Big up Alex. Yes, I was almost making a point of not doing a James Toney career review because there was some guy that used to turn up in the live chat and never give me any donations, but just constantly demand that I do a James Toney career review. But yes, I will definitely look to do that. Alex, big up for the super chat. As far as there doesn't seem to be anyone like him anymore, society has changed. There are now different avenues available for young men that come from the inner cities of the United States. Avenues to make money which are a lot easier than professional boxing. A lot of them become athletes. Obviously, some go the academic route, but the ones who are more alpha, narcissistic, etc., may become rappers, again, athletes, etc., etc., rather than professional boxers. Professional boxing in the United States now is very much a niche sport. It's not mainstream. There are perhaps fewer people doing it now than there were back in the days, as in professionally rather than just training or whatever. So, yeah, it's not surprising that we're not seeing the likes of a James Toney coming through, who is a very abrasive, very brash, trashy kind of character, loudmouth. I mean, a lot of people don't realize the extent of trash talk that James Toney used to keep up with in those days. He used to make death threats all the time. And I'm not talking about threatening to catch a body in the ring. No, he was threatening to catch a body outside the ring all the time. James Toney was always talking about how he was gang affiliated and this, that, and the other, and, you know, threatening people with being shot and whatever at press conferences and in interviews. In fact, at one point, because he didn't have a good relationship with his dad, who was always in and out of prison, he threatened to kill his own dad. Now, James Toney's from Michigan somewhere. I think it's Grand Rapids. I want to say it's from Grand Rapids. It's either Grand Rapids or Ann Arbor. I think it's Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids, Michigan. But big up Alex. I'll definitely look into that James Toney career review. AJ says, I have a feeling Hay is coming back. Keeps alluding to, you'll see a lot more of me soon when doing any YouTube interviews. Yeah, he said he's got some type of big announcement to make. But is he coming back to the ring? Last time he had a move around with, was it that Joe Fournier guy, his friend, that he had a move around with? I think it was him. Big up Luke Elgar, excuse me, for the super chat. No message on that one. Just send in $1.99. Big up Luke Elgar. Much appreciated, sir. Kylie says, same place as Mayweather, I think. I don't think they're actually from the same town. Okay. Castle says Mayweather is Grand Rapids and maybe James Toney is Ann Arbor. So let me look it up. They're both from Michigan anyway. That I do know. Let's have a look at James Toney. Yeah, James Toney's from Ann Arbor. Okay, yeah, he's from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And Floyd Mayweather, indeed, as that person said in the live chat, he's the one from Grand Rapids. All right. I knew it was either one of those two. That Toney was either from Grand Rapids or Ann Arbor. So yeah, he's from Ann Arbor, and Mayweather is from Grand Rapids, not Flint. I think he said it. I think I said Mayweather was from Flint earlier on. No, he's not from Flint. He's from Grand Rapids. Oh, for real? Kylie says, good to see Roy finally get his Olympic gold medal. Did they do that? Did they reverse the decision from the Seoul Olympics? Kyle says, Toney knocked out Deion Sanders. Apparently, did he? What, back in the days? Growing up or what? I've never heard that story before. I remember when James Toney fought in MMA. That was a sorry sight. He tapped out in about, was it 15 seconds against Randy Couture? Oh, okay. The Korean guy gave it to him. All right, so they didn't actually overturn the result. Oh, Toro says they did overturn the result. Hopefully, because that was one of the worst robberies I've ever seen. Amateur or pro. That was a shocker. Oh, okay. You thought they overturned it, but apparently they didn't. Because even during the Olympics, the Korean guy was acknowledging that Roy Jones had won the fight. You know? That was an absolute shocker. Bexy says, random one from Bexy. Do I think David Lammy is based? I've had a few people behind closed doors say he is. He's never come across in his entire political career as based. So if he is, he's doing a great job at hiding it, because no, definitely not, I would say. No. King says, Hatman, do you think everyone should train MMA rather than boxing because most street fights end up on the ground? I'll probably say yes, but try both. You know, it is mixed martial arts at the end of the day. And there are many mixed martial artists that started off in boxing and then transitioned to MMA, so, and they did well, right? Okay, Cal says Tony and Sanders were at a college football camp. They had an argument, and then Tony knocked him out, and the college kicked out Tony. Yeah, I do remember that James Toney used to play American football. I do remember that. And he was over 200 pounds when he played American football, because they used to talk a lot about James Toney's weight when he was a middleweight, super middleweight. Talked a lot about his weight back then, and they said, and because James Toney, from the time when he was at least a super middleweight, was talking about fighting at heavyweight. And at the time, everybody thought he was crazy. Like, what? Even his trainer, Pops Miller, said that James is crazy talking about fighting heavyweight. His own trainer said that. But little did we know, he would make it a reality. Because he always used to say, well, I was big when I was playing football, you know, over 200 pounds. So it's nothing to me taking on heavyweights. Not that Deion Sanders is that big. How big was Deion Sanders? Even 200 pounds? 220 at the most? Maybe less than that. How big was Deion Sanders? What was he, like a wide receiver? What position did Deion Sanders play? Running back? Wide receiver? What was he? Let me look it up. Deion Sanders. Okay, cornerback. All right. Says here, 198 pounds. I guess that would have been in his prime. So, not the biggest guy in the world. 198 pounds. Anyway, let's move off James DeGale. Don't think anybody really cares about him. Put the Mike Tyson gifs back on screen. Everybody likes Mike Tyson gifs. I enjoyed his time in the WWE, or WWF as it was then, Attitude Era. D-Generation X, he double-crossed them. Here's Mike. WWF/WWE always had the most amazing theme songs. I can remember so many of them. The Generation X was like, yeah, the Generation X. I like their theme. I liked the Iron Sheik's theme. Any of you guys remember that one? Hulk Hogan, of course. I am a real American. Is it real or true? Fight for the rights of every man. The Rock, with his theme, The Rock says, ding, 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 ding. Yeah. We got supersized fries. Canelo versus Crawford breakdown video coming. Have I not done a breakdown video for that already? Maybe because I've done so many lives, I might not have got around to doing a dedicated breakdown video. Yeah, I'll do one for sure on Fight Week. Shout out to Supersized Fries. My prediction's been out there for several months now, I think, since the fight was signed. I'm going Canelo. Big up Supersized Fries. And my thinking behind it is Canelo's got the size advantage. Crawford didn't look great against Madrimov. I know Madrimov is a different style, got better feet than Canelo. Faster than Canelo on his feet. And the in and out movement of Madrimov is what confused Crawford a bit. Canelo's far more flat-footed, and stylistically that'll suit Crawford more. But Canelo's a lot stronger than Madrimov. Vastly experienced, hits way harder. He's more physically robust. Knows his way around the ring. On top of all that, he's got the judges in his pocket. For Terence Crawford to win, I have to figure that he'd have to really beat the brakes off Canelo. And that would necessarily involve, in my mind anyway, standing with Canelo long enough. Not like he's going to be trying to slug it out, but, you know, in spots, standing with him long enough to where Canelo will be able to fire shots back, heavy shots. And I don't see Terence Crawford being able to hold up under that kind of firepower. Do you know what I mean? So maybe I'll be proven wrong. So I reckon Canelo will probably take the fight on the scorecards. I know Terence Crawford is a very brave guy, very strong-willed guy. If his strong will gets the better of him, then maybe he will get stopped, you know? One thing I should say about Terence Crawford, though, is he's very physically strong. But compared to Canelo, surely he won't be able to compete in the strength department. But certainly, you know, in the welterweight division, he was very, very strong. He's got a background in wrestling as well, apparently. Not just boxing. Big up Jan for the super chat. He says, Hatman, what are your thoughts on Conjuring Doll? Conjuring Doll? What is that? A new movie in the Conjuring series? Or is that a person? Please educate me here. What's Conjuring Doll? Is that a new Conjuring movie? Or is it an adult film star? I'm totally out of the loop here, people. Help me out. Yeah, Annabelle. So you're talking about Annabelle from the Conjuring movie. I mean, what do I think about Annabelle? Okay, Jan says, the actual possessed doll in the Conjuring film, basically it's a real doll. Is it? I've never heard of that it's a real doll. I would love to give you my take, but I have no idea that it's a real doll, and I don't know anything about that. Big up Jan. I think I might have seen 2 of the Conjuring movies. I never found any of them to be particularly scary or that interesting, to be honest. But there's a lot more of them than 2. How many is there? 7? Because within that Conjuring series, isn't there also the Annabelle movies and The Nun? Isn't The Nun part of the Conjuring thing as well? The Nun and The Nun 2 and The Nun 3, and are they not like spin-offs of the Conjuring? Or you guys correct me if I'm wrong here. East Midlands Fight Fan says, I hate horrors, they are corny. It's not my favorite genre, but I do watch some horrors and I find them hilarious. You know, a good horror is really funny to me. Like really funny. I'll laugh from start to finish. For example, perhaps my favorite movie of the year so far, and I don't normally watch these kind of movies, right? These kind of horror popcorn flicks. Not normally my thing, but Final Destination Bloodlines has been my favorite movie of the year so far. I laughed from start to finish, bro. I was just laughing all the way through. And I wasn't really into the previous. I saw maybe 2 or 3 of the previous Final Destination movies, and I was like, okay. I get the concept and all that. But this one, I think they really nailed the formula. Particularly with the comedy. It was hilarious. No, I've not yet had the chance to watch anything today, truth be told. But I will be checking out Hereditary. Cash says, when the kid got crushed at the beginning of which? Final Destination Bloodlines? Does the kid get crushed at the beginning? There are so many funny deaths in that movie, right? So you got that one brother who's part of that family, the one with the piercings in his face, who's proper nonchalant, and he's always like skeptical about this idea that death is coming for him. When his nose ring gets caught up on a chain that's wrapped up in a ceiling fan, that's crazy, right? That's an eye-watering moment. But that's like a false alarm for him. He dies later on when he gets sucked into, what is it, an MRI machine or something? The deaths in that movie are hilarious, bro. Rosby says good horror shouldn't be funny. I totally disagree. I like horror best when it's hilarious. Although I laugh at a lot of stuff which isn't supposed to be funny, but I find it funny. But Final Destination is supposed to be funny. And they nailed it with Bloodlines. From start to finish, I was creasing. Big up Supersize Fries for the super chat. He says, Bomax said they're going to beat the brakes off Canelo with how him and Bud are speaking. It seems to me they're showing Canelo very little respect. Well, could be, or it could just be the typical promotion that you get from both teams in the run-up to a fight, trying to push Netflix signups. You know? They got to sell it. And Netflix haven't been trying to sell it that hard. So maybe it's up to the fighters. Big up Striker. I don't know about my number one favorite horror movie that's funny, but I always enjoyed the first two Jeepers Creepers movies. I thought they were hilarious. Anyone like Jeepers Creepers? Thought that was funny as hell. But big up Supersized Fries for that super chat there. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell. We'll find out. I would suspect that it's probably more like Bomac and Bud Crawford promoting the fight with all their big talk rather than having no respect for Canelo. I suspect that would be the case, but we'll find out in what? A week? Big up. Yeah, where did you get those out? That's right, Jazz. Jeepers, creepers. East Midlands Fight Fan says Jeepers Creepers is a decent movie. Toro TV says the first 30 minutes of Jeepers Creepers had me scared when I was a kid. As an adult, I'm in a movie with the guy whose eyes he took at the end. Oh, for real? You're an actor? Jan says, Jeepers Creepers, that movie was creepy as hell. Yeah, but in a funny way, because it's ridiculous, right? You remember that first Jeepers Creepers movie? It's got that one actor, I always forget his name. And it's got all the typical horror movie tropes where the, characters could get away, but they decide not to, and curiosity killed the cat and all that type of business. I mean, they see that they nearly get run off the road by the Jeepers Creepers guy, first of all. And they're kind of lost in the middle of nowhere. And they drive past and see the Jeepers Creepers guy next to some old church throwing what looks like a wrapped up body down some chute. And rather than go to the police, they're like, no, let's turn back and investigate. And even worse still, he's like, no, let me get into this chute and try and shimmy down to see if this... That's why it's funny. Because the stuff the characters do is so stupid. It's like pantomime or something. You know, when there's the villain behind a pantomime character and all the audience is like, he's behind you. Yeah. That's how those horror movies are, like Jeepers Creepers. It's so ridiculous the way the characters behave, deliberately so. And that's part of what makes me laugh. That's part of what makes me laugh. Okay, Toro says I was an extra, but I'm in the same shot as he is. Okay, he played a butler. Oh, for real. A big up Supersized Fries. He says, if he wins, could Bud beat Benavidez at 168? Hell no. Hell no. I think Bud's got a far better chance against Canelo than he would have against Benavidez. Not that Benavidez is ever going to fight at 168 again. But nah, even if he did, Bud ain't beating him, in my opinion. No way. Too young, too big, throws too many shots. At least Canelo's low volume. Do you know what I mean? Benavidez throws a ton of shots. He's very physical. Big up the Sweet Mass for the super chat. He says, just joined. I've actually wanted to see Tyson and Mayweather in an exhibition for a while. The two biggest pay-per-view stars in the ring together. Right, somebody who's a fan of the fight. I'm not necessarily a fan or a hater of the fight. I'm just indifferent towards it. I don't have anything massively against it. You know what I mean? I don't have anything massively against it. It is what it is. You know? Both guys have always enjoyed trashy things, and so they're keeping up with the same behavior after their careers are finished. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Big up the Sweet Mass for the super chat. Bite-sized boxing says it's a weird fight. It doesn't captivate me. It's two old men, particularly Mike Tyson, damn near 60. You know, two old men. But Mike Tyson moves and looks like an old man. Mayweather's still got some youth about him in his movement. He's still got that fluidity, you know? Obviously, he's 11 years younger. Mike Tyson moves around like the geriatric he is. King says, Hatman, if you played Red Dead, do you prefer John or Arthur? I prefer John. And yes, I played both games. Benny says, Hatman, I swear you said you weren't going to buy the White Atama pay-per-view. Big up the Fire Stick stream team all the way. Rusby says, if Crawford wins, he will retire. So, if you can call it, I guess it's a horror movie, which I also enjoyed earlier on this year, Nosferatu. That's more of a serious horror movie, you know, no real comedy in it. But I did quite like it. Is it scary? Not really. I want to say the first scene that Nosferatu appears in is pretty scary, creepy, intimidating, especially when you watch it in the cinema, you know, with the full sound system and everything, because sound is so important in horror movies. Sometimes when you're watching a horror movie at home, it doesn't have the same impact, right? Because there's no sound, or, you know, the sound doesn't have, it's not as loud, and the bass and all that kind of stuff. So that scene with that Nosferatu is in, the first scene in the movie that Nosferatu appears in, that's a creepy scene. Like, very creepy. But other than that, there are a few other creepy bits in the film with Nosferatu, but it's not the scariest film in the world. I just like the aesthetics of it. Big up Benny Stacks. What were we on as far as likes, by the way? 68 likes, 261 concurrent viewers. Yeah, if everyone can drop a like on this stream, it would be much appreciated. If we can get the likes up to like 125, 130, that'd be a good place to keep them, right? 50% of the concurrent viewers. Big up everyone in advance for liking the stream. It helps these streams get bumped up in the search results and suggested videos. Really helps me out. So if you can all do me that small courtesy, it would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. That's right, Toro TV. Hit the like with the strength, with the form and strength. There you go. Big up music playlists. JR says, did you rate the Smile movies? If they do a number 3, that could be interesting with that many people cursed. I've seen the first one and I thought it was quite good. I thought the first, and I laughed throughout Smile as well, just to show you my humor. I found Smile funny. That is the measure for my personal taste of whether I enjoy a horror movie, is whether it makes me laugh. It may not be intended to make people laugh, right? Some of these films, but whatever the case may be, I find a lot of them funny, and Smile was definitely one of them. So yeah, I quite liked Smile. It made me laugh throughout. Big up Striker for the super chat. He says, dare I ask, how do you think Mayweather versus Tyson will look? Well, Mike Tyson moves around the ring like he needs a Zimmer frame. Mayweather has still got some fluidity about him. I think it'll look like a mosquito buzzing around a fat, lazy dog. Not that Mike Tyson is particularly fat these days, but, you know, the visual equivalent of something like that. A fat, lazy dog in the middle of summer, and there's a fly or a mosquito buzzing around his head, and he's too tired. He doesn't have the mobility to do anything about it. So that's what I envision in that fight. East Midlands Fight Fan says, do you like mafia gangster films? If so, which ones? I'm not like the biggest fan of them. I like some of the classics, you know, Scarface, Goodfellas, The Godfather, particularly 1 and 2. 3 was also cool. Yeah, some of the classics, but it's not like my go-to genre, you know. Also, Carlito's Way was good. Donnie Brasco. You know, the classics. Big up JR for the super chat. He says, do you think Don Charles is making a Stan Dupont voodoo doll? Big up Jack Trussler for the super chat. He says, big up Weapons with Josh Brolin. Would recommend. Yeah, I just saw it the other day. I saw Weapons. We can talk about that if you want. I think I might have spoken about it in a previous live stream, but we can talk about Weapons. I'll give you guys my take on that movie. Trying to avoid spoilers. But to JR's point, do I think Don Charles is making a Stan Dubois voodoo doll? I want to say no, but it wouldn't surprise me if he actually is, because Don Charles is such a phony when it comes to spirituality. Here's a guy who professes to be this, you know, devout Christian, and look at the way he was speaking about Alexander Usyk. Would a Christian talk about another Christian like that? You know? Furthermore, Spencer Fearon has done interviews recently, over the past couple of weeks, where he said that he's made peace with Stan Dubois, but he stands by everything he said about him. And one of the things he said is that Stan Dubois is an obia man. He does judge, right? So if Don Charles was this devout Christian that he claims himself to be, and what Spencer Fearon is saying is true, why would Don Charles be hanging around in that job? Man's doing juju, and you know what I mean? What kind of Christian is that? So it's a lot of pretense with Don Charles. Therefore, maybe he's bossing Judge as well. You know? Maybe he's bossing Judge as well. Who knows? I've got no idea whether he is, but, you know, it wouldn't surprise me. Let's just put it that way. No idea whether he is, but it would not surprise me. Especially since he's desperate, you know? Big up Crazy Pickney. Callie says it'll be the first time Mike being a taller guy in there. Yeah, he's fought some people the same height as himself, Mike Tyson, a few times. But I don't recall him ever fighting somebody shorter. So yeah, I'm sure that would be. Paladin says Tyson is completely stationary. Floyd will be fine. Yeah, most likely. King says they used that juju business to spook AJ. After the news came out, he was talking about pray for me 2 days before the fight, despite looking confident throughout the build-up. Now, to Jack Trussler's recommendation of weapons, so without giving any spoilers away here, I remember seeing a trailer for weapons, and the trailer was quite intriguing. The plot was basically fully explained, or the plot that the movie appeared to have in the trailer was basically fully explained within the first, 10 minutes of the movie. With like voiceover and stuff. I'm like, I don't really like this. I'd have preferred if they'd played out the start of the plot in the actual movie. That would have been more interesting, but they didn't. I don't know if they originally did and then they, in editing, decided to cut the length of the movie down. But I didn't like the way the movie started. And it's quite slow-paced at the start, and especially after being disappointed at the way that they just ran through all of the mysterious elements that appeared in the trailer and explained them all. I'm like, okay. So I found maybe the first 20 minutes of the movie, maybe half an hour, a bit dull. After that, it picks up, becomes somewhat interesting. It's not a scary movie at all. You will not be scared by weapons at all. I mean, I wasn't anyway. I don't recall any real jump scares or anything like that. It's more like psychological. Josh Brolin's good. I thought the Chinese guy's good. I think he's actually British, that Chinese. Is he from Manchester or something? That Chinese guy's got like a big round head. I'm not sure of his name, but I think he's like a British Chinese actor. He's been in many movies over the years. He was in The Sunshine, which is a Danny Boyle movie. Sunshine. Danny Boyle movie years ago. And the movie is structured in an episodic fashion similar to Pulp Fiction, although in Weapons it's done in chronological order, right? But what I mean is they tell the story from the perspective of multiple different characters. So there'll be a sequence of events. They'll tell that story from the perspective of one character. Then they'll rewind, basically, and tell it from the perspective of a different character. Then rewind again and tell it from the perspective of another character. So it does that like Pulp Fiction, but again, it does it in a chronological order rather than being all jumbled up like Pulp Fiction is. And that's pretty good. They pull that off pretty well. And it's quite interesting what the movie's about. Not scary, but it's quite interesting and thought-provoking. Although there are plenty of unanswered questions by the end of the movie. So overall, I thought that Weapons was decent. It's a decent film. Simon Jones says Jeepers Creepers versus Predator. You got to go with Predator. The first Predator over Jeepers Creepers. And Jeepers Creepers to me is wildly entertaining and funny. But Predator's iconic, so I gotta go with Predator. Very different kind of movies. Predator's more like action and what have you. Jeepers Creepers is like a teen, borderline comedy horror. East Midlands Fight Fan says, Hatman, I went back and watched Pulp Fiction after you said to, it is a better movie than I thought I watched. I watched it first when I was 12, and then when I was 18, I'm now 42, it made more sense. Yeah, I liked Pulp Fiction from the first time I watched it as a teenager. And it was a game changer. It was a total game changer. Jack Trosser says, Lock, Stock, or Snatch. I've seen Snatch more times than I've seen Lock, Stock. I'm going to say Snatch, but I forget so much of what happened in Lock, Stock, right? But Snatch has got Bricktop, and we're always using that as a euphemism for somebody. Hell or High Water, have I seen that? No. Encircled says, greatest horror film ever is Alien. I don't want to say it's the greatest horror movie ever, but it's one of my favorite movies ever for sure. Alex says, did you like Top Gun? Pure 80s. I was never a real big fan of Top Gun because it had all the cheesy romance and all that in it. I was like, I did see Maverick. And yeah, it was surprisingly quite decent. I mean, nothing special. But it wasn't a disaster. And most of those movies where they dig up actors from the 80s, like Indiana Jones or Sylvester Stallone, to reprise their old roles, it's usually disastrous. But with Maverick, it was decent. Nothing special, but it was watchable. And Circle says, I think Jaws is second close. Another one of my favorite movies of all time, Jaws. The practical effects don't hold up very well in Jaws, obviously. The shark looks ridiculous. But the acting is just fantastic. The Johnny Williams score, absolute classic. East Midlands Fight Fan says Robert Shaw makes the whole movie. He's the highlight, but everybody puts in a good performance. From the mayor to Brody to Hooper, the wife. All the performances are great all round. Yeah, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was disturbing. I saw that as a kid and that frightened me. That disturbed me. Especially that scene where Leatherface conks that guy over the head with a sledgehammer and he starts like convulsing on the floor. That proper shook me up. That proper disturbed me. When I watched that as a kid. That really, and when he puts the girl on the meat hook and all that, I was like, nah, this is too much, bro. I can't watch this. Exactamundo said it went ting when he hit him. Music playlist says Seven or Silence of the Lambs. Both good movies. I go with Silence of the Lambs. But both very good movies. I like those kind of murder mystery films. Big up Samil. How am I doing? I'm doing good, my bro. How are you doing? Little Jacob says it's based on a real-life serial killer, Ed Gein. I think his name is spelled G-E-I-N or G-I-E-N. I actually did an episode on Patreon about him. Because I've got like a serial killer series on Patreon, which I need to reprise actually. But I must have done 10 episodes maybe about serial killers. Talking all about their life and giving my view on the crimes and the potential tie-ins with other criminals or deeper stuff even than that. But yeah, Ed Gein was one of them. He was absolutely nuts. It wasn't only based on Ed Gein though. There were aspects of Leatherface that were based on Ed Gein. But he was also based on other serial killers. Because Ed Gein, I don't think actually killed anybody. Or did he? No, I think he did kill. But Ed Gein at first was just taking bodies out of the cemetery. That's what he was doing. I think he eventually might have killed someone. No, I think he did kill someone. But at first, he was just taking bodies out of the cemetery. And he was like making furniture out of human skin. Yeah, the guy was all the way out there. The Iceman, I guess you're talking about Richard Kuklinski. He doesn't have a good reputation among those ex-mobsters. They all say he was a fraud. So I don't know, man. I don't know. There was a movie made about him, but all them ex-mobsters say it's all a load of rubbish. Kuklinski just made it all up. Not that he weren't, a criminal and everything, but he was embellishing his story to high heaven, according to the Michael Franceses and the Sammy Gravanos and all them kind of people there. Well, Kuklinski claims that he was part of the Gemini Lounge crew. What was the main guy that ran the Gemini Lounge? I forget his name. Italian-American mobster. Roy DeMeo. So, yeah, there you go. So, Zactamundo mentioned it. Yeah, he's part of Roy DeMeo's crew. But, yeah, them ex-mobsters that are around now online, they say that Iceman just made a load of stuff up and made himself out to be far more significant than he actually was. Exactamundo says, Iceman claimed he was part of Roy DeMille's crew. None of the surviving members say they even knew him. Cal says, a Polish-Irish guy claiming to be a made man is silly. Did he claim to be a made man, though? I'm not aware of him claiming to be a made man. Because in the mob, the captains will have crews, and the crews are not full of made men. They're, full of all sorts. They're full of associates. That's how they describe them, associates, not made men. CO9 says, do you think serial killers are born evil or nurtured through their environment and experience? I think it's probably a combination of both in most cases. I think that with a lot of serial killers, they are born psychopathic. But most psychopaths don't become killers, much less serial killers. But if you take someone who's born a psychopath, right, with that personality disorder, right, and then you put them through abuse, think of the type of monster they can become when they were born psychopathic to begin with. Then you raise them in with abuse and all sorts of other stuff. It can go very, very badly left. Somebody says the world, Osaka Castle says the world is a scary place. It is. Veer towards the light rather than the dark, you know? Callie says the original Alien film is probably Ridley's best work. Very atmospheric and incredible visuals. It's almost like a piece of art. I completely agree with you. I love the world that he created in that first Alien movie. And uncharacteristic for a Ridley Scott movie, the writing was really good in Alien. Normally in Ridley Scott movies, the writing is the biggest downfall. But in Alien, it was great. And Sigourney Weaver, of course, was a revelation as the lead character, the heroine. So, yeah. My favorite Ridley Scott movie, without a shadow of a doubt, is Alien. So on a lighter note, although still somewhat dark, on Instagram, I saw a couple videos recently of some type of masquerade ritual in, I want to say a town or a village somewhere, which seems like West Africa, maybe Nigeria or Benin. And it's got this guy running through these village alleyways, chasing a bunch of people. And he's got some type of ceremonial outfit on, covering his face and his body. It looks like a video game character. And he's moving at crazy speed. I mean, the athleticism on this guy running in that video game character looking outfit. I guess it's some type of traditional, I don't know, warrior outfit or something in that part of Africa. And he's whipping this guy running through the street. It looks crazy. I've seen a couple of those videos now. He's running through the street, whipping, and this whip is cracking, boy. Oh my days. And he whips this guy until the guy crumbles to the floor with this whip. He must have welts that guy the size of tennis balls after being whipped like that. And so I asked a few people, what on earth is going on there? And they explained to me that, yeah, in certain parts of Africa, usually in the villages, they have these kind of weird traditions at certain times of the year where these guys will dress up in weird costumes and stuff. And they walk through the streets doing their ceremony and their rituals. And if they catch you outside during this ritual ceremony thing, they're going to demand money from you, basically an on-the-spot fine for being outside your house when you shouldn't be. And if you refuse to pay, they're going to chase you down and whip you. Crazy. The way that he was beating this guy, bro, was like something out of slavery. I'm telling you. The cracking, he actually broke the thing hitting the guy. Huh? He and the speed that he was moving at in this costume, chasing this crowd of people down, and obviously there was a straggler, and he caught up to the straggler, and he was whipping him while he was running. Guy was damn near sprinting, but also whipping him. The speed and athleticism of this guy was impressive. But it was all sorts of messed up, you know. So hell with living out there, you know, in the rural areas where they do stuff like that. That's long. They have many weird rituals in Africa, and that's been going on for millennia, for thousands of years. There's always been weird rituals in Africa, bro. Weird stuff. So apparently, during the Middle Ages in the Mali Empire, there was the famous ruler Mansa Musa. And he was the richest man in the world at the time, according to even Western historians. I'll tell you that at the time he was the richest man in the world, and he's one of the richest men of all time. So he was the ruler of the Mali Empire, I guess the emperor, however you want to describe him. And as I understand it, he used to conduct some type of ritual, similar to the one that I've just described that still goes on, right, in rural parts of West Africa, where he would go through the streets, I guess being carried aloft, you know, on his throne or whatever. And he'd do it on one particular night, and nobody was allowed to look at him, right? Or speak to him. And if you did look at him or speak to him, I think they killed you, right? So they would do that on one night. And on the very next night, he would walk through the streets and everybody would have to look at him and have to greet him. Or else. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, what on earth is all that about? What in the world is all that about? People talking about Equatorial Guinea. Do they speak Portuguese there or Spanish? Is it Spanish they speak there? Okay, they speak Spanish there. All right. Very few countries in Africa speak Spanish, but Equatorial Guinea is one of them. Yeah, Mansa Musa was an extremely, obviously rich and eccentric ruler. You know, very, very eccentric, ostentatious. I mean, he was balling. Do you know what I mean? He was like balling on a whole different level. All right, peeps, I'm going to shut this one down. We've had a good chat, boxing and other stuff. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining the conversation, and a special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were Mr. Luca, Kevon Green, AJ, Supersized Fries, JR, Alex, Luke, Elga, Jan, the Sweet Maths Striker, and Jack Trussler. Much appreciated. And as I say, big up everybody else who joined the conversation. It's been good as always. If you can do me the small courtesy on the way out of just sticking a like on this stream, it really helps it get seen, bumps it up in the search results and suggested videos. All right, thank you for that. Until next time, take care, be good. I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.